about what I wanted to say today, because there's so much. The organization does a lot, and I've been involved a great deal, and it's been an awesome opportunity. And so there's a specific verse that is it's functionally my life verse. It's a verse that I feel encapsulates my mission for this time here on earth. And I wanted to share that with you guys and pray quick, and then I want to show a brief video that kind of tells a really nice overview of what the organization actually does, a little bit of history, and why we exist. And that should hopefully give us some backdrop here. So just give me 1 second here. I'm waiting for the screen to load here. I'll see if I put that in the right one. All right, so just to forewarn you, well, before I do that, I'm going to share with you that verse, and then I wanted to just pray if we could. So the verse that it is it's in James. I love James, mostly because James is my middle name, so I've made it a personal mission of mine to be fully acquainted with James. So it's in James chapter 1, and it's verse 27. This is, people a lot of times will say, like, well, you're a religious guy, right? And I just kind of scoff at it, only because I don't really like the overarching term, religious, because it has some negative connotation, unfortunately. And so I said, no, I'm a Christ follower. I'm someone who believes that Jesus came and he was who he says he was, and that he rose again after he took all of the sin's burden. And so I believe that portion. And because of that, I'm going to follow him. So that's my religiousness, if you will. So this verse, I love it, and I'll read it. I'm sure you all have it open. We're reading out of NIV. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and keep oneself from being polluted by the world. So I love that because it encapsulates not only our personal commission, what our responsibility is, right? We're there to take care of orphans and widows, and then to foremost make sure that we're preserving our temple, both physical and spiritual, and not being polluted by the many entrapments that so easily surround us. So with that, I want to show a quick video. I will warn you, the opening few seconds of it has a very terrifying laugh, and there's a reason for it. So I just wanted to let you know, so then all of a sudden you hear like that particular sound, it'll make sense in just a moment. And I'll explain why that exists the way that it does in a moment as well. So assuming that will work. It will work. Look at that. We're going to do this. Oh, it's science. I know. Yeah, we'll see if we have sound. Let's see. All
right. That's all loud.
What started with a laugh on a ringtone turned into something beautiful because people like you came together. about our connection to this faraway community. We are Buffalo, city of light, city of good neighbors, underdogs who don't believe in quitting when the battle rages. They are a city on a hill, Lion Mountain, a community who has suffered brutal war, extreme poverty, nearly forgotten by the rest of the world, yet still they stand. In all this darkness, they insist on reaching out for hope and for each other. It's the pairing of our two communities that reminds us maybe we aren't so different than our neighbors halfway around the world. Maybe the needs of the poorest are tied up in the deepest need in ourselves. Maybe it's our downfall to believe it's them or us. Because in order to thrive, perhaps we actually need each other. And honestly, we've already begun to see it. We are better together. We began with the conviction that the need is great, but we all have something, and we can all use what we have. We asked ourselves, what do we have? And marveled as our small drops became oceans of change. Still today we watch in amazement, and we're not ready to throw in the towel. What might your drop be? Or more importantly, ask yourself, what might your drop become? Imagine a hospital where women and children's lives are saved. Imagine agricultural programs and micro businesses that empower people to lift themselves out of poverty. Imagine all the villages in an entire region of Sierra Leone having clean water. Imagine a full high school in an area where one never existed. Imagine the children of an entire community fed, healthy, and receiving an education. Imagine a safe house dormitory where girls know their value and embrace a better future. Imagine.
Okay. All right, so that was a lot. I'm sure you probably have a lot of questions and would like to know about what you just saw. So I'll start, if I can, from the beginning, kind of talk about how LOL got its roots, that strange laugh, and kind of where we are today and what's happening and how we can all play a part in helping it continue to go forward. So back in 2009, the founders of Let Them LOL went to Sierra Leone. They were going there for a missions trip, and they were looking to see if there was a region internationally that was in need of some assistance. They began documenting their trip there and understanding what was going on in the communities there, what's the need in Sierra Leone. And while they were there, they were going from village to village, really to kind of gather an assessment, to understand what is the need, what's happening, why are we here, essentially. And when they were visiting one of the villages, they got to one of the homes, and one of the co-founders was a registered nurse, and so she was able to quickly identify this young boy, probably about 11 months old, was not doing well. His fever was peak, his heart rate was incredibly high, and they were filming and they were just watching, and as they were there, baby Jonathan just sat there before them, and they knew that he wasn't going to make it. And the reason for his passing is because he did not have access to clean drinking water. He had a waterborne illness that unfortunately the mother, for lack of access to any other form of water, was providing this water to the child. The child ended up contracting a condition that would end up taking his life while they were there. And so they immediately said to themselves, this is not okay. So they came back home and they were on mission. And they have that laugh as an opportunity to make some money. So what they did is they took that laugh, which is one of the co-founders' laugh. His name is Joe Vicanti, a friend of mine. And they took that laugh and they sold it as a ringtone for $3. And it was grassroots. They kept on selling. They said, we need to get clean water to Sierra Leone. I don't care what we need to do, but we need to get clean water there. So every time that phone rang, you would hear that wonderful laugh. People would begin asking questions, obviously. And so it gave them an opportunity to tell a story about why they had that ringtone and how they could buy it. And so they ended up raising enough money almost overnight, very quickly, to go there and raise the funds to dig a well, which is awesome. So that was back in 2009. Their goal, the organization's goal from that moment as it was founding and as it was in its infancy stages was, well, we need to try to raise enough funds to drill a well every year. If we can do a well a year, that'll have an impact, right? Because usually in these villages, these communities don't have access to clean water, so they have to go to like these places that are in the absolute middle of nowhere, stuff you wouldn't even give your dog to drink, and they carry it on their head back to the village, usually about a mile or so in one direction. And so their goal is to do one well a year, and it's now 2018, and we have 110 wells that we've been able to dig because of just complete God stepping in and making it happen. There's been people that have donated individual wells, there's been communities, there's been churches, there's been people, there's been schools that have banded together and said this is not okay. And so because of that, we now are in possession of not one but two incredible well drilling rigs. You saw the one overview with that big yellow machine there in the middle of nowhere. That is one of our well drilling rigs. That's about a $400,000 machine that was donated to us. And another one was donated by the same gentleman, wonderful guy. And so that is easily almost $1 million rig that was just given to us. And so here you go, now you have two. And these rigs can go down into the earth about 150 meters or deeper if they need to, and actually get the clean aquifers, not just like the water tables, but the actual clean water source that exists deep below. And they can bring clean water. So now with those two rigs, and they've had some machinery and equipment donated, just people all come together from all shapes and sizes. And so we said, okay, great, now we have water, but there's a lot more to do. So with that, they realized in the community there was such a greater need than just water, because while we spend a few seconds turning on a faucet to get water, we can carry on the rest of our day. We can focus on things like infrastructure and education and providing a better life for ourselves. They don't necessarily have that opportunity because they're spending 6-7 hours a day just trying to get clean water to stay alive. And so since we've freed up that time in these communities, we can now invest in other ways. So we actually built a school, and it was the first school the community had ever seen like that. And what's unique about our school is we actually give every single child in our school a full meal every single day. So every single day they have a full lunch. It's a super protein concentrated meal package. We actually make those they're kind of like the meal ready to eat, the MREs, the meal ready to eats. Yeah. And we make those right in Harris Hill, right on the corner of Harris Hill and Griner. They showed the overview of that newer building that you were looking at. That's actually just down the road from here. It's not too far. That's our LOL Volunteer Community Center. So since we actually started packaging meals there, because we found out, hey, this is something we can actually do, because we were paying to get those available and ship them there. We thought to ourselves, well, what if we do it ourselves? Can we save some money? And so we did. And being good stewards of God's money, every time we would package them, we donated 10% of all of the meals we packaged to the Food Bank of Western New York. And the reason that that's important is a lot of the communities who are taking advantage of these are immigrants from Africa. So they're getting these beans, lentils, rice, and that's like the biggest thing in demand. So because of what God was using this organization for, they were able to give back to the community right here in Buffalo too, so it's been really awesome. So they're able to go to our school. We have about 350 kids who are currently attending our school. We actually have the majority of them are in our school because of people that are like you and me back here in the States that have elected to sponsor these children. So my wife and I and my family sponsor 2 kids, and we get to interact with them at least a couple times a year. We get to write them letters, they write back letters, we send pictures, and it's wonderful because I've had the privilege of actually meeting my sponsors, which is kind of unique, but I've got to meet those girls and give them big hugs, and they just kind of look at me like, they don't really know what to do with me, so it's fantastic, but most people don't, so it's okay. I feel right at home. So I've been able to meet them, and I'm actually very excited because I'm going back obviously in September, and so I'm raising money now to do that, so I'm excited to go back and do some more good work there. Aside from the school, we also have a children's home where when we were doing our village assessments early on in our mission, we began to go from house to house and to say, who are all of these children? Who do they belong to? Because a lot of times what happens is people will they can't afford children, so they'll give them away, they'll just abandon them, and so these children are forced to live with their aunts or their uncles or whomever is closest of kin. And if you are living in one of these homes as a nephew or a distant relative, you are treated as though you're an indentured servant. You're not treated equally. You're having to take care of meal preparation, go fetching water. So it's not a great situation. So for those that were, truly abandoned, we said, well, that's not okay. So we built a children's home, and so we have about 28 kids who are in full-time, 24/7 care, and we have 2 different house moms who take care of. There's a boys' home and a girls' home, and so they have grown up, and it's so funny. These children, they have grown exponentially, both in health and in stature. And you go and talk to them, you would think you're just talking to some kids from down the street, because they're so cared for and they're loved. And these are things that people don't ordinarily get in Sierra Leone. Showing a child compassion. They're just they have a very loose relationship with children, because 1 in 5 children die before their 5th birthday in Sierra Leone. So because of that, they don't get close with their children, because there's a good chance that they're not going to make it. So they kind of treat them like, hey, maybe you make it, maybe you won't. So we're helping to overturn some of those statistics, especially in the communities where we have wells, which is awesome. We're bringing, clean water to 40,000 people in Sierra Leone now because of this program. So that's kind of a big deal, I think. I think that's something that we're really excited about. As we had the children, some of the children, maybe have moms or dads, especially the young women. You can imagine the disparate treatment that they likely endure as a result of being in that community. There's a very poor approach with how they're valued and how they're treated. So when they talked about having a girls' dormitory, those are girls we've identified in the community who don't have necessarily a safe place to stay because they live with an aunt or an uncle or someone, and they're not treated very nicely. And I'll never forget, I was in Sierra Leone. It's October 2016, and a young girl, she was motioning to me to come over and talk to her. And so I went over, and of course she's fetching water from one of our wells, and she has the pail on her head. I don't know how they do it. I can barely handle anything in my head. So they put me to shame. It's fantastic. But she's just sitting there, and her friend was interceding on her behalf, saying, come talk. And I said, hey, what's going on? And she goes, before she even spoke, she just had like a tear just streamed down her cheek. I'll never forget it. I said, what's going on? And she said, I have shame. I said, okay. Do you not have a safe place to go when you go home at night? And she's like, no, I don't. I said, do they hurt you? I said, yeah, they do. I said, okay. And so we, fortunately, were already in the throes of putting together this girls' dormitory. And so, fortunately, she'd already been identified by the school nurse as a strong candidate. So I have a picture of me and her. I don't have it up right now, but she just looks so solemn and so just lost, just totally vacant. And I've seen her since then with pictures, and she's smiling ear to ear. She's all joy's been returned to her heart for sure. So it's been an awesome thing to see, God work in these children's lives and really give them hope and really give them an opportunity to, laugh out loud. And it's really cool to be part of that. I think there was one last thing. School. Girls. So the girls' home, yes, we have about 10 girls we have right now identified in the village that are in there. They're able to, they live there throughout the week, and they can stay through the weekend. Sometimes they go home for the weekend, sometimes they don't. We have the ability to now, with government approval, have them there, because the government has a hard time taking on the idea of children's homes or orphanages, because a lot of times, unfortunately, when God's not involved, these orphanages are not handled very well. The children are not treated very well. So we're a bunch of weirdos because we treat these kids really well, and I think that, obviously, Jesus has shown up on this campus, and when you walk there, I've walked through the community, and there's just like there's a darkness that just surrounds you, and it's so, you can feel the enemy trying to just be around and just not welcome you. And when you walk into our campus, like, hope is palpable. You feel safe. You feel the weight of the world is going away. So Jesus is absolutely in the center of our campus, and we're teaching the children about Jesus and why he's important in their lives, and why we're only able to help you because of what he's doing for us. So we're just trying to show them that we're nothing special. We're not just a bunch of white Americans that are going to come and save the day. That this is God. This is him stepping in, and we have about 40 employees in Sierra Leone that are Sierra Leone nationals that are on the ground there. They're running the program there. We run the program here from the state side for administrative direction, financing it, obviously. So there's a lot of things that are going on in Sierra Leone And one of the things that we do now, I mentioned the meal packing. People can come. We are open a couple of times a week. People can come as an individual. They come in groups. They come and just do meal packing, and you can do it by donation. It's like 25 cents a bag or whatever. And we've had church groups. We've had people from all walks of life come in and pack some bags. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great program. So that's the majority of what I wanted to kind of talk about today. I do have some information, some literature, so if there's any questions that I didn't address that I'm sure you probably have, I'm going to stick around for as long as there are questions. And I have some literature I can give you guys as well. I also do have some children that are available for sponsorship with me as well, so if you're feeling led to interact with that, and if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer your questions you might have about that. I tell you, you'll absolutely be blessed if you make that choice, because it's you put a face to a name, it no longer becomes so distant. And that's the majority I want to talk about. But if I could, I would like to just kind of close in prayer, if that's okay, if you guys would have me do that.
Do you want to take any questions?
Oh, yeah, actually, before I close in prayer, is there any questions? I'm sure there are some.
Yeah, I got like 5.
No, you were first.
No, go ahead.
No, you're first.
No.
I didn't.
I love
I
questions.
forgot.
Questions are my favorite.
Oh, sweet. I was just curious, how much Orthodox Christian biblical principle and doctrine on a theological basis is given each week, considering Bible studies, sermons, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera?
So, a couple of cool things about that. So we have every single day, every single student endures what we call...
Oh, I forgot it was a dual question.
I
The
love the
Bible's
question.
being handed out.
Oh yeah, the Bibles are valid to all the children. They all have a Bible. And but they have every single day they have what's called religious education, and they talk about God and Jesus. They open the Word every day. They talk about God. They pray every single day. So God is entrenched in
New
every.
Testament and Old Testament. Both.
Yep. No, only the Apocrypha. No, I'm kidding.
I like him. He's good. That's good.
But yeah, to answer your question, so they're in the Word every day, and they pray to God every day. They understand that we only exist there because of what God is doing, and so Jesus is the reason that we're there, and we make that very clear to them.
Pretty cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize for confusing.
I love questions. Questions are great. What's your question?
I was going to ask you, I follow the UFC. I can't think of the guy's name. Maybe you know him. They dig wells for the pygmies.
Okay.
Did you ever hear of it?
I'm not familiar with that organization. No.
Yeah, they do the same thing. They dig wells, and
Yeah.
he's did numerous of them.
Yeah, there's a couple of huge international organizations that do this. Charity Water is an organization that also is heavily immersed in that community. People have asked, what about, especially when I talk to people where I have other people who are from Africa present, they'll say, well, what about Kenya? What about Libya? And I'm just like, these are all great questions. But I feel like right now our commission and our stewardship is to do well with what we've been given, right? And to focus our efforts on the areas that we can focus on. If we begin to branch out too far and stretch ourselves, we begin to limit our exposure. We begin to actually limit the depth of assistance we can give these people. So there are a lot of great organizations. We just happen to be located in Sierra Leone. I mean, I know that it mentioned it briefly, but they were war-torn by the Civil War. Has anyone ever seen Blood Diamond, the movie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's
brutal.
not really that's not really an exaggeration. So all the roads there are completely decimated because of just different infrastructural destruction during the Civil War, and as a result of that, a very large portion of men were killed off during that time. So there's a very predominant female presence in those communities because the youngest and the strongest were kind of taken care of. So what remains is a very broken infrastructure in an already poor country. And so that was the other thing, the medical clinic. So we're actually putting a hospital right on our campus. And the reason that's so important is Sierra Leone is like one of the lowest in the Human Development Index on Earth. And about 1 in 50, no, it's greater than that, I don't have the exact number, but too big of a number of mothers die in childbirth because of medicine that usually costs about 98 cents. And so they don't have access to it though, so they can't, they don't have access to that kind of simple medication that could, stop someone who is, bleeding. The medication would be literally $1 to stop it. So we're actually building, and we're in the process of building a hospital. It's kind of a women's, women and children's type hospital. It'll be there. We have like 4 different birthing centers. It'll be available on site. We'll have a triage room. We'll have area for kids. We'll do our checkups and stuff there for the community. And so that's something that, God has delivered all this money. We don't have like, just a giant pile of money sitting around that we're just like, let's do all these great things. God just continues to use people, and it's awesome how we can depend on God to pay for these things, and it's been awesome to be part of it because mothers can now go to these places and they can have children and be safe, and they can live, and children's health is improved because of it, because mom's alive, and all these things we kind of take for granted here. They're like, oh, my mom's still alive, right, Mom? Any other questions?
It's mind-boggling. You said 110
110 wells, yeah.
in 11 years?
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, it's about $6,000 for a well.
Wow.
Isn't that
And so
phenomenal?
you answered one of my, the Nationals are involved in.
Yeah, so it's completely run by them on the ground. The reason for that is because it's very easy to want to go somewhere and be like the personal savior of everyone. It's like, this is what we're doing, and we wanted to 100% avoid that. We wanted to let God use the people and empower them. We're about empowering them to take care of themselves, because ultimately they're going to be the ones who are going to create the best future for themselves. They're there. They're the ones doing it. So people will often ask, well, do you want to adopt the children and bring them back home? I was like, for what? They need strong people there. They need people who are going to be world changers there. Our job is to just kind of let God do his piece, and we're going to show up where he wants us to. So yeah. Yes, Mother.
Can you tell me how the Ebola virus affected the family structure?
Yeah, so Ebola back in 2014, that was intense. So that was a very scary time for all of Sierra Leone, also Libya, and it was just a treacherous time, right? Because in the community there, if I have time, I didn't have time, but I have a video of how they do church, and which brings me back to your other question about church. I have an answer for you about that too. It is close, it is hot, and it is loud, and it is fantastic. And they are shouting and hooting and hollering, and it's fantastic because they are a very physical community. So they're always touching everybody. There's a lot of touching, there's a lot of contact, and that's something that we don't do in the States very much. We're very, very straight-laced, very concerned about things. So, not me, I'm not very touchy, but so when you're there, the communities who experience Ebola, someone is sick, you're going to want to touch them, lay hands on them. The problem is you can instantly transfer Ebola when you touch someone. Just by skin contact, you can transfer Ebola. So we had to basically encourage them and teach them how to restructure how they do life, and teach them the basics about rinsing their hands off with bleach and bleach water. Obviously, it's not just straight bleach, but just helping them learn how to have basic hygiene to prevent that sort of thing, which is very hard. And actually, most recently, there was a small outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, right in Central Africa, near Sierra Leone. But there was a recent outbreak, about 15, 20 cases of Ebola. And a family actually pulled this person out of quarantine to bring them, like, no, I'm going to take you home because we know how to take care of you better. And they were like, well, that's probably not the best idea, because now you've just spread it that much further. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not worried. But to answer your question, so there was a lot of lives lost. Our on the staff people there, we have a well team that goes to every single well that we've dug. So that's just the thing too. A lot of times communities will have a well dug and then they leave, and then you go back 6 months later and it's broken and it never works again, right? And I'm sure you see that. You go into places and it's like, look, we raised money for this well. That thing has not worked since 1987. And so you go into these communities and you see these broken down wells. Sometimes we can actually rehab those wells. But our commitment, our ongoing commitment to these communities is not just, hey, we're going to give you a well. It's a ongoing partnership. So they have to preserve ownership, and they have to notify us when things aren't working. And we'll go to every single one of these wells at least every 3 months or so. And we will make sure that every single well is functioning as expected. And if they aren't, we'll repair them. Usually it's like a 75-cent rubber grommet. But it's that, or having 350 people have cholera. So, so it's something so simple, but because they're so used to not having people care for them, they just like, oh, I guess that doesn't work anymore. But we're helping to change that and give them hope. That, no, you're worth it. You're worthy of clean water. You're worthy of the most basic of human resources. So that's our ongoing commitment too. Is we're in it for the long haul of these communities, and so they see us coming. And during Ebola, we actually still went from village to village. They were just very careful. They said, don't touch us. We won't touch you. Good to see you. And they would check in all the wells during that time. Even though we told the staff that you do not have to travel from village to village because we know that you're putting yourself at risk. And you're like, well, if they don't have water, that's just going to make things that much worse. So they went, and they went boldly out there. And fortunately, not a single person on our staff or in our children's home was affected by Ebola. So we're incredibly, none of our students, nobody in our main village in Manodase were impacted by Ebola. So does that answer your question, ma'am?
The secondary part of it was one of the reasons that there are so many children in a household with one or two adults is also true because of the Ebola that took out parents, right?
That's right, yes, that's part of it. Part of it is they don't know anything about proper family planning. And so what ends up happening is they end up having more children than they know what to do with. A lot of times the children who are born there are not at the equivocal will of both mother and father, if that makes sense. So there's not always a choice in the matter. So there are homes where you know, one of the things that we do is we go from house to house and we basically do a community assessment. We go into the homes, and these people are fantastic. You go to the homes and you sit down on a porch and you talk to the matriarch of the home, and I ask them a gauntlet of questions. How many children live here? How many children are in school currently? How many are not in school? How many people had malaria last year? How many mosquito nets do you guys have? How many people passed away in this last year? And so, you know, there's some things that make it really real, especially when I'll never forget, I was in this one room, and I'm talking to the people who are answering my questions, and I said, okay, so how many people have passed away in the last year? And like, we had someone pass away last month. I was like, I'm so sorry, it's terrible. And they're like, and this little toddler runs in front of me, probably maybe 13 months old, maybe 14, 15 months old, and he's like, oh yeah, this is his mother. I was like, oh. Okay, and so it's like they're just so matter of fact about it. I mean, they certainly mourn it, but it's just like this is life. This is what they're doing, and so you get to have these experiences that are very very tangible, for sure. And so yeah, that's part of it. Ebola was part of it. That's been an ongoing problem because they'll have just more and more children, and then they'll send them off. A lot of times, fathers or uncles, they'll live in a different village, and they'll send their children. What's happening more often than not is people are sending their kids to Mono, where we're based out of, because they heard about our school. We have the very first high school in our entire district. To put that in perspective, a district is kind of like a county, and so it's incredible because these children can now actually, most of the children who go to school end at 8th grade and then they're done. And that's on a good day. The majority of them were men. Girls weren't always given the opportunity because the women are expected to stay home and cook and clean and take care of everything, and we're changing that because we're incentivizing these parents that, hey, bring your kid here, we'll feed them, you know, and they're like, oh, well, I can get down with that, you know, because a lot of times the kids, that's the only meal they get that day. So they're incentivized to come to our school, you know. It's there's not a truancy officer in Sierra Leone. Kids are showing up.
Yeah.
Other questions? You got a question, yeah?
Yeah, well, you guys have a lot of valuable equipment.